pulls the wire, it just unplugs it.
Oh, that's good, but it could still blow around and twist and get stuck in the branches somewhere, be pulled up.
Well, yeah, it's possible, but there was a branch that was a real problem, but fortunately it went for a crack and tuttled.
Oh, that's good. I hope it didn't fall on anyone. Yeah, look, I found tenors and trees. I mean, they're a good idea, but they are a bit of a problem, blowing around and stuff like that. But anyway, we don't have to worry about it here too much.
True, with the tenors you got. Yeah, anyway, I've had that problem when I did wind around the caught up the problem branch, and I just couldn't reach it. Well, there was a pain in the backside, but when that tree went for a crack, I was more than happy.
Yes. Well, it's all fine. Yeah. Oh well. So what else has been happening? Not much, I suppose. Just
nothing much really. Some exam accessing today, and 3 people got through their foundation. Good passes too.
All right. So people have got a few cluey people on the line.
Not that I'm on yet, but they passed the exam today anyway.
Oh, that's good then.
BK3 for BJS is on the line and listening.
Good
evening, David.
G'day, Jeff. How are you going?
G'day, Jeff. When are you going to upgrade?
I'm okay, David. I get asked that question all the time, but all in the fullness of time, as somebody said.
The fullness of time. Yep. Okay.
Fullness of time. You should make that short so you can upgrade quick.
Yep. Because then you can run 100 watts here and have a big power missions.
That's right. If he gets his standard, he can run 160 metre missions.
Might be handy when I go back to the States later in the year to just take the little FT60 with me, maybe.
That's right. Yes. And you still haven't found those headphones.
No, Dave, I keep forgetting them, and it's too cold and wet to go out to the shed to get them.
Oh, well, you've only had about 3 months.
Well, you know, as I've always been told, you can't rush these things.
Yep.
Go to Mr. Lee, TOQ.
Hello to Jeff and Lionel.
How's your puppy dog?
As monstrous as ever. He escaped for a short time today when I was trying to unblock the cemented-in stormwater pipe.
Oh, so what, cement in the water pipe?
The stormwater, they replaced the footpath, and in replacing the footpath they managed to break the pipe and fill it full of concrete. So I didn't want my garage to flood.
Oh dear, that didn't sound too bright of the people who did the work.
Yes. So, why is it feeding back now and it wasn't earlier? Well, anyway, when it started raining, I got my gurney type machine out there and tunnelled under the footpath in preparation. I've got to find some pipe in preparation for inserting said object in the muddy hole I generated.
Yeah, oh well, not the best of days to do it either.
Well, actually, it's a good day because when it rains again, it's going to take all the mud away. And twice I aimed the gurney type thing at the dog, and he wasn't particularly worried. So when I did get down on hands and knees to have a look in the hole, he came up and stuck his nose in my ear, which is his normal procedure. So, yeah. So I've had a bit of mud puddling today.
Oh dear, oh well. Is it blowing over your way, Lee? I imagine it would be.
Yes, there's the odd gust of wind.
Well, just about continuous here.
Oh, you've got pine trees or something to hear them. No, it can't hear them too much.
Oh, okay. Well, golly, I'm looking forward to the warmer weather.
Yeah, well, what about me? A month in Indonesia and then coming back to this.
You should have stayed.
Oh, don't know about that. Maybe I've just got to get used to the cold.
I think it's going to improve a bit more now. And the reason you mentioned that the feedback, the trouble is, see, everything's going through an Audimax. So if you drop your level, it brings it up. It'll reach a point where it just stabilises into feedback unless I turn it down here when the thing goes up there. So it's like chasing your tail. So basically, there's not much you can do about it. If you stop talking, the feedback will just tend to happen.
Oh, okay. Yes, I notice it's stopped now. So yes, it's computer generated feedback, computer assisted feedback.
There's not a computer in line. I think it's more like 1950s equipment that's doing it, analog limiters and stuff.
Okay, I don't know what an Audimax is, but I know what a Nawala is, and it's probably the same thing.
What's a Nawala?
It's a thing we used to install in railway stations. The only problem is the person would be making an announcement. It simply listens to the millivolts coming back from the loudspeaker and adjusted for background noise. The problem being a train, they were about to make an announcement about a train coming into the station. The train puts his brakes on hard, maximum voltage feedback into the loudspeakers, so it goes to full volume, and then the train suddenly stops and it's dead quiet, so the announcement's made at full volume.
Yeah, that's an interesting system. You certainly need something, a feedback loop like that at stations. Of course, yeah, if you just have it, but I guess it just needs to be sorted out. Yeah, well, the Audimax is basically a gated AGC thing that it's quite a complex logic circuit in there, but they seem to work quite well. I mean, they sort of
system operating when you were at the railway station, Sir Dave?
I don't think they had it. I think they just had an amplifier with two 807s in it and a Zephyr microphone. I don't think I worried about anything like that. The louder you spoke, the louder it went.
Fair enough, yeah. Yeah, oh well. Anyway, who else is on the line apart from Mr. FVJS and Mr. TOQ?
Don was, but he's whether he's coming.
Oh,
through.
yeah, he was a bit noisy into your
He needs
system.
a beam. He needs a beam tenors.
I've lifted the setup a bit. I don't know whether it makes any difference to the hum or whatever.
Well, hum's the least of your problem. It's just the noise into it.
He's readable, there's no problems there.
Yeah. He was coming through well this afternoon when you have it. I just turned on 440 and he was coming through quite well. In fact, two people come up via 440.
Come up in 440 now.
Yeah, do that. That'll be much better. Then we'll have a five-way turf talk. Which would
2,
be,
3, 4.
oh, that even sounds better too.
Oh, does it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, so we've got a 5-way turf talk. Well, how about that?
Better quality than. Is it the same rig or what?
706.
Oh, it certainly sounds more. It's got more bass. Well, probably because I've got the bass turned up here on that channel, but it's got a pleasing tone.
Yeah, should be the same sort of tone. I would expect, whether it's on 2 metres or 160 or whatever. I actually had an FM contact a couple of months ago on 160.
Oh yes, FM works quite well on 160.
Well, mobile. Clint 3 Stone was mobiling around with fairly low power on 160 metres FM, and worked him all the way until he got to Kugong, and he wasn't running much power. I think he was stuck too short. He might have been running a 706 something, but he wasn't running much power, and it was a good contact.
Oh yeah. No, FM's good. It's no good for nighttime skywave, but it's okay for local contacts and all that sort of thing. Yeah, Mr. Long's called up. He'll be on in about 30 minutes apparently, so we'll be standing by for his interesting input to the missions. So that's
interesting today to Mr. Long. I tried to call him up on Skype about half an hour ago, but he might have been doing something else. So good evening to...
So it'll be good when he comes on. I can just he can be in charge. I can go inside and do what I was going to do and leave it running. So that'll be quite good. You got some chimes there.
Chimes outside.
Oh right, blowing in the wind.
Yeah, it's actually the ones I found at Hard Rubbish Collection, and when they start to chime, that means it's quite windy.
Yes, which certainly seems to be that way.
What's on the radio?
Go ahead.
Feedback.
Yeah, I've got my hand right over the speaker, Lionel. I was going to say, Dave, wasn't that Peter, Paul and Ferry blowing in the wind?
Ah, yes, that's right. And Mary's no longer with us, apparently. Well, she I think she...
Oh, she handed in a guitar or whatever.
That's right. I must admit I was a bit of a fan of Peter, Paul and Mary back in the 60s, singing all their protest songs and things. And to Mary Travis, to hear that she's no longer around is a bit of a shock, really.
What's he gone to the other side?
The other side, yes, that's right. She's singing on the cloud.
Yeah, but
And we say morning.
Oh, morning, Mr. Egg. Yes, I remember there's one of the folk festivals. They're singing. There's winds blowing and her hair's blowing all around her face and everything, and she's singing. This. It's really quite a remarkable clip. I think might have blowing in the wind. I'm not sure, but yeah. So that was the Newport Folk Festival. That's right, back in the 60s.
Lionel and everyone else is interested. I got an email from Ian, VK3IFM, and to inform me that Alf Chandler, ex-VK3LC, passed away last week, aged 105.
Now that's interesting. We're only talking about
Yeah,
Alf.
Anthony was telling me that today.
Yep, we're only talking about Alf the other week and saying how old he was and that. So obviously he's passed on as well.
Passed away 105. That's not a bad age.
It's pretty darn good, isn't it? Yeah. Well, that's I suppose it's unfortunate he's gone, but he's had a very good innings, and I think he was fairly with
Excellent.
it up until reasonably recently.
Been one of the oldest people in Australia, I would say.
I think he would be certainly the oldest ham, and probably one of the oldest in the world too, if you put it that way. Not many people do much past 100. But wouldn't that be amazing, being 100, the change you would have seen over your lifetime? From horse and carts and candles to modern jets and internet, and it's just incredible.
Even in my 60 years, I've noticed I've seen a lot of changes.
Oh yeah, look, I think that's true. The world has just changed so incredibly.
No TV when I first came when I was young. Nothing like we've got now. We basically, we've got phones like you see on Dick Tracy comics.
Good evening.
Oh, morning,
Mr. Long.
Chris.
I gather from what you say that Alf Chandler's passed on.
That's right.
105.
Yes, 105. That's pretty good. Just the other week we were talking about Alf, and people were wondering whether he's still around, but he was, but now he's not.
So 60 years, I've seen a bit of time, a bit of changes, from black and white TV to, to what they got now, and transport, and, so 105, well, because you would have seen, like you said, horse and carts and things like that. Cars were coming in about when he was young, but he would have seen a lot more changes, of course.
Well, it would have been 1905, so
yeah, that's right.
So not many cars. There'd be a rarity to see a car.
But it would have been spark gap radio.
Very little spark gap radio, just for the Navy, really.
Yeah, that's right.
It would have been quite a totally different world.
Crikey, my father was born in 1905, but he only lasted till 1970.
Enough, he would have seen the major part of the changes.
I was born in 1910, but
likewise.
He died in 1957, but that was due to wall injuries.
My parents, I think, were born about 1911, so they used to talk about horse and carts and kerosene lamps and wind-up phonographs and that, so they'd seen all that pass, and
my father would have been, he would have been about 100 if he was still alive.
They saw aeroplanes, basic things, to modern jets.
Mother would have been 101. She was born in 1909.
Right.
He would have been about 100 if he was still alive.
Yeah, it's I think my father would have been about the same age as Herb. About the same year, I think.
1909.
Right.
So Alf was born before that.
Keep in mind, electricity distribution. The kilowatt-hour meter and the fuse was invented in 1883, I think.
It's amazing what they did. Didn't Edison have a lot to do with that when he installed power in New York? Had to work out how to meter it and charge it and make it safe?
All the major stuff with electricity happened in about 3 years, and it started spreading around the world within another year.
It is amazing. It's like it just catches fire when certain technologies catch on. They go zoom. They bumble along for years, and all of a sudden they reach a tipping point, and it all takes off. I suppose the technology just gets reliable, and it's had its day, and it all happens.
The trouble is, Mr. Edison lost most of his kilowatt hours in IR drops in his DC cables.
Although he did have that double cable. We had 100 volts a side, didn't he? Had that centre fed thing. So 200 volts.
Well, they do now, but this is DC current in 1880, whatever.
Yeah, that's right. I think he improved on that later on with the distribution.
Most mine-type stuff used 100 volts worth of lead-acid battery, which equaled 115 to 120 volts. And that's how that AC voltage came from the DC, and then our 240 was double that.
Yes, that's right. So everything's got a history, hasn't it?
There was another one. Oh yes, the width of our roads can be traced back to chariots in Roman times, and which is the width of 2 horses behinds. So work that one out.
Well, I suppose have to make it some width, don't they? And that's probably quite a good one.
Apologies if the signal's going all over the place, but it's blowing a gale outside.
Oh, it sounds okay here. It's here on the meter.
Most excellent.
Yeah, so anyway, I've got another two-way turf talk. We go till 2 o'clock again. Yes, it was big.
Apologies for the lateness of the hour last week.
Oh, it doesn't matter. I mean, a lot of people didn't hear it, but we can replay the Clint bit another time. And
Interesting last week, that's for sure.
It was a marathon missions.
Yeah, it was a fascinating crossband, wasn't it?
Yes, that's right.
I'll suggest to Clint that he comes on a bit earlier. I mean, he could come on about an hour or 2 earlier.
Things to do or whatever. I mean,
It's Saturday morning over there, yeah.
Yeah.
It's 4 o'clock and it was still going.
That's right. Yes, it kept going, and we're sorry we had to. It all seemed to work out in the end. It went on, and we had to go through so many reels of tape to record it all.
Yeah, look, the only slight advantage of RF is that you don't get the latency causing you stuff-ups.
Oh, yeah, and if you just want to make a quick comment, you just prick up the mic. It has certain advantages, that's for sure.
Oh, instantaneous.
Yeah, and the quality is... So that rig hasn't popped, hasn't blown a fuse or gone berserk, has it?
No, once or twice I've run it on 15 watts and it seems to tolerate it for short periods.
When I said, don't worry about, I mean, be a bit careful of high power, what I mean is don't leave it on for hours. I've left it on here for half an hour before when it was testing, it was fine.
Look, it goes without saying, you wouldn't need to leave it on for half an hour for these crossbands.
No, that's right. I mean, probably a couple of minutes overs and a minute
ideally
off.
Suited to all of
Although
so thank you so much for arranging it.
Yeah, well, it's quite a good mitter. Have you used it for any other, talk to anyone else on it?
Oh yeah,
other
quite
band?
a few. Actually, I've changed the audio input from what you had. I've now got one of those XABC 600 ohm to 600 ohm transformers isolating everything. I don't know why, but the transformer was in that little setup didn't isolate primary and secondary for some strange reason. The one that you gave me.
Oh, right. Was it causing any problems?
Just circulating earth. You remember there was slight hum.
Ah, yes. Look, that box, it was built for those, remember those Fire Brigade UHF emitters, the STC?
Yes.
It was built when I had a patch system for that, probably
right, well, it was,
30 years ago.
It used a transformer that's 600 ohms to 5k. And I'm using now 600 to 600, so it's a little bit closer to matching.
Oh, yeah. I had no idea what was in the box. It just seemed to work when I plugged it in. But anyway, it's sounding very good indeed.
Most excellent.
Yes. No, they were a good rig, those. They were a bit... Oh, it's Anthony. Go ahead.
Ah, g'day. You are live.
Yes, we're live. I think he's on 2 metres or he's on UHF, I'm not sure.
No, I'm on 7.
OK. You're dropping in and out a bit. I'll just turn the squelch down. Or up, or whatever they call it. Stand on by.
Did you get my letter, Anthony? Just not only did he not get my letter, he didn't get my RF.
Oh, yes, you're hearing me. I'm in Doncaster at the moment, and I did get the letter, and I am getting the RF.
Oh, most excellent. I've got another box of valves for you, this time in original cartons.
Oh, yes. I've got a car full of children, and I'm just up in Doncaster Road, but I'm obviously not in the optimum position. I'm transmitting on 70 centimetres from the car. Yeah, I'm just stopped at the lights. When I get moving, it might be a bit better.
Is my audio more optimum this week?
Think so, yeah, it sounds pretty good.
It's working pretty well from here.
Yeah, it sounds exceptionally good.
Oh, most excellent. Well, that's on the low power. Hang on, that's on the high power.
Makes really no difference at this location.
Any difference where you are, John?
Oh, it's about S1 on the low power and about S3 on the high power, but I think you're using that beam, so it's not pointing this way.
It's pointing a little bit to the west of...
Oh, well, that explains it then.
It sounds about the same on both powers. Good-o. Anyway, you got that printout, Anthony. I'm glad to hear that. We found one more box of radio mags for you and one box of valves, so whenever you care to pick them up.
Yes, okay. I can hear myself coming back through on 2 metres. I've never actually done a crossband mobile before.
It's very dangerous. I think it's illegal.
Well, there you are.
The VKC will come out and book you for doing duplex missions in the car.
And a penalty into the bargain.
That's right. Actually, in the laws, radios are exempt, but they might not like it anyhow. So we wouldn't like...
Car as well, so I was just saying, like 2 kids car as well, so what does that do?
I think they'd throw the book at you, Anthony. They'd throw the book, they'd look at all your radios and the kids and they'd say unsafe driving, and you would probably be sent to Tasmania or maybe Port Arthur, Guantanamo Bay, I think. They'd really like to make a case out of that.
There's one major problem though there's no technical people left in either the ACMA or the police, so they wouldn't know what they were looking at.
They wouldn't, but they could still make it unpleasant to... they could book you for, a cracked tail light or something like that. Yeah, so we could be quite good, quite bad, but two-way radios are, at this stage, exempt. They should be. I mean, they've been available to be used for the last 50 years. And
I've never quite understood the logic of it, that you can't make mobile phone calls, but somehow you can make two-way radio conversations. Isn't it the same thing?
No, I don't think it is, because by its nature, most two-way radio calls are very sharp, quick and to the point.
I guess the microphone also can be held on the steering wheel, where with a mobile phone, obviously, you can't.
I think what it is, people tend to have in-depth, long conversations and take no notice of the traffic, but people with mobile radios,
The majority of police cars have a radio like this in there.
They do. And I think the other thing is, what you would be doing would be discriminating against your courier drivers and your truck drivers and people like that who are using the radio for work.
I guess so.
Which they've been able to do since 1940, but all of a sudden now they're not allowed to do it just because of phones. I mean, so I think that's why they've, if they brought it in, I think a lot of people would be quite annoyed by it, because there's still quite a bit of commercial traffic, people driving around in vehicles and things.
Yes, we're getting huge wind gusts here. I suppose up where John is, it must just about be flattening the trees.
Well, actually, it's not that windy at the moment, which is interesting, but then it probably will be later on. And sometimes it's really windy here and it's not windy in Bayswater, and so some of these things tend to be a bit localised.
Yeah, it's
in Doncaster.
It's the winds died down here a bit, which is good. It's just maybe we're in the eye of the storm.
Yeah, because it was very windy this afternoon, a lot more windy than it is now.
Oh, right.
Oh, John, I'm just listening off your input frequency, and I'm getting you in such fire out of this thing.
Oh, that's excellent, isn't it?
It's blowing Mitcham as well.
Right, blowing in Mitcham.
I've tapped out of the audio just after the discriminator. The unfortunate thing is I have no squelch, so I have to listen to all the hisses between the overs.
That is the problem when you do that, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
I think I might put a relay across the transmit-receive LED and see if I can get that to key the audio.
Yeah, that's you mean off the squelch LED?
Yeah.
Yep, you could do that. In fact, I think I've done that in those rigs before, to use that. Actually, it's a very useful thing, that LED driver. You can use it to run relays and things, which I've done when I had a setup.
And then you could make a bogus repeater system as well.
My wife's just calling me. I'll be back in a couple of minutes. I think I may be causing TBI. Ooh.
Oh, if that's the case, we'll have to go to Skype. We'll stand on by.
Yeah, well, I modified a Frog 7700 so the mute worked in all modes, and it had a relay in there to remote control other things if it receives a carrier. And I'm going to use that for a few experiments of one sort or another.
Yes, they'd be quite good.
I mean, that was a good thing about C42s, was their rebroadcast Earth, which was actually a relay contact, which when the mute opened, it shorted to ground.
It was they had the big clunk relay.
Yeah, that's right.
And the big light came on, a 6-watt light came on, and the little cover with the radiation cover.
It was actually about no, I don't think it was 6 watt. It was about the same power as a bicycle headlight, which was about 2 or 3 watts.
Yeah, so it certainly run a relay.
Yeah, that's right. Well, the relay switched the light on some of its contacts because the relay coil was in the anode of the valve.
Yep.
And it had some contacts that switched the audio, some contacts that did the rebroadcast to Earth, and another pair that did the light.
Yes, they were set up, weren't they? You have the connection box, and if you're in the signals department, you could set it all up so that you could rebroadcast everything down telephone lines and other frequencies and pretend you're a big army man.
And you could hook two C42s together so that it would repeat things on another frequency.
Yeah, I wonder how desensitised it was when he did that.
Oh, there were filter boxes and things you could buy if the frequencies were too, well, you could get issued in the army, I suppose, so if the frequencies were too close together, you could eliminate that problem, but I think generally they used frequencies that were far enough apart for that not to happen.
Yeah, what were they again? What, 30 to 60 or something, weren't they?
36 to 60 megs they covered.
Okay, if you went up the top and the bottom, you probably wouldn't cause too much trouble.
And the more modern army rigs that are synthesised cover 30 to 75 megs.
Yes, there's some good army equipment out now, isn't there?
Yeah, well, things like PRC 77s and 25s and all those sorts of things, they're around out there and quite easy to get.
Gee, John, I'm getting a full 7 or 8K worth of bandwidth out of you.
The Ilvis rig has been made so it goes from about 50 hertz to more than 8K, and then the microphone, I think, gives you about 8K or so.
Most pleasant to listen to.
Superfi. Yeah.
Yeah.
So when the army, when they decide it's cheaper just to have mobile phones and satellite phones, they might just throw out all that stuff, and you might get a lot of modern army equipment.
And then we're going to have a whole new range of things to use for missions.
That's right, yes. All to the good. In fact, the army, it would be cheaper just to throw out that stuff, get rid of the signals department, give people satellite phones and say just use them, and they wouldn't have to worry about all this, jeeps full of junk.
Well, some commercials have gone down that path, haven't they? So you might be driving a courier van and getting rung up on the mobile phone all the time because they don't want to pay for a two-way radio anymore.
That's right. Of course, you can have data links via 3G and just have a screen. I don't know why they don't do something like that.
Yeah, in fact, why didn't the police use a system like that instead of that system they've got?
Well, that's right. I would have thought it would have been cheaper for the police to just tap in on the NextG network and use that as a data terminal, and then the money they were going to spend on all their rubbish, they could have used to put repeaters or phone towers where they need them, and black spots, and it would have helped the whole community and would have been all to the good and would have probably been a better system than having their own system.
Commercial pressure from the big M.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Pity they have so much say in things. Yes, then they could...
Well, who knows who's running the country right at this present
Oh,
moment.
that's right. It's going to be a dog's breakfast, whatever happens, and I think there could be implosions or something. Anyway,
Yeah,
we'll
but
find
whatever
out.
government you get's only a figurehead anyway, really. It's a big business that runs the country anyway, so that's what happens.
We won't get political.
But we haven't got a government at the moment.
We've got a caretaker. We've got the janitors back.
That's
But janitors!
Yes,
back to the janitors and the all that situation.
yeah, I should replay that 1975 thing with the janitors and I've forgotten all about. But yes, that's all to the good. So the janitors are cleaning their rooms at the moment. Whether they get a new broom or whether the janitors can open up the broom cupboard. So
The old Arabian curse. May you live in interesting times.
that's right. Yes. So were you causing TVI or some other query?
No. Prue was yelling out that she wanted to sit up in bed and watch the TV from there, so I just rolled the TV into the other room. It was no problem at all. Of course, she's watching digital channels, so it's highly unlikely I'd cause any problem.
It'll either work or not. Yeah, look, 2 metres is the most benign frequency, really, for causing any interference.
I'd say so. From what I'm not hearing from neighbours, they're not even aware that I'm on the air most of the time.
Well, they wouldn't be, I don't think. Yeah, it's
So
only...
when I go on 160, I worry a little bit about computer audio systems that are in plastic chassis.
Yeah, look, if you have a good radiating antenna that puts all the missions out without, wires and things dangling everywhere and causing local radiation problems, it helps a bit.
Yeah,
like a nice pure vertical.
That rectification thing will occur no matter what. It's a measure of how well you're getting out, basically.
True.
It doesn't matter how clean your signal is, it'll still be subject to rectification in unshielded transistorized circuits.
True, but if you have...
That's the trouble with all this rubbish from China that everybody's getting. It's none of it's shielded. It's all made of plastic and it's just junk.
But if you have like your antennas in the centre of the yard and it's a good vertical radiator, the inverse square law, the further away you go from the antenna, the signal drops.
Well, I suppose so.
If you have bits of wire in trees draping around the whole yard, then everywhere is close to the wire and you get that sort of pickup. So I think it's a good, efficient antenna actually helps reduce interference in some respects.
It'll be very interesting to see how we go there, because I would assume that most people who have the money to spend on plasma TVs would be watching digital.
Oh, yeah, look, TV interference now is the least of your problem. It is the rectification thing, which is the worst problem at the moment, which trouble, and of course, is that it's not frequency dependent, although I think you'd find that the lower frequencies are better. If you come up on 30 megs or something, it's much worse. 160 isn't too bad.
But then at least with rectification, it's the person whose equipment's getting the rectification problem's fault and not the amateur's fault, so you don't really have to do anything about it.
I've only had that problem once before. There was a guy down the road. I announced when I got the 60-watt mitters, the old Western mitters that Lionel loaned me, going. And incidentally, that crackling is...
the wind.
It's the antenna blowing about. I'll have to screw the elements a bit tighter. I announced my mobile phone number and said, anybody who can hear me other than on a ham radio, please give me a ring. And this guy, who I knew vaguely down the road, gave me a ring from about 4 doors away to say he was listening to me on the computer. Well, I said, I offered to come down and put some ferrites in his leads and add some shielded leads. He said, oh no, don't do that. I was interested in what you were saying. So it was no problem. He said, it's not in the nature of a complaint, it's just in the nature of an observation. I said, oh, thanks, mate. We left it at that.
4 streets away, he must have a sensitive computer.
No, 4 houses away.
4 houses. His computer speaker is probably more sensitive than Marconi's a receiver.
It's probably just a chance combination of inductance and capacitance that caused some resonance on 160. Nobody else was getting it.
All you need to do is, those mini plug to mini plug speaker leads, just get an old ferrite from a transistor radio and wrap the cord around and tape it up.
Sure, I offered to do that, but no, he was more interested to listen.
Oh, right, okay.
I offered actually at that point to give him an old transistor receiver as he could...
No, I don't want to listen to that much, he said. I'm not that interested. Yeah, oh, well, it's all to the bad. I mean, all to the good. So,
well, it's one of those things where I think in future that'll be our main problem. I mean, when they go to digital channels exclusively, that'll be the end of that problem.
Well, one good thing is more and more hi-fi gear, audio-visual gear, gets hooked up via HDMI cables. And that is
or
great.
Optical, which is even better.
Because there's no analog, and it has plugged the system into their speakers. It's all... well, actually, they're still a speaker, I suppose, wire. But basically, you do away with those RCA leads and all those dangling leads, and it's just a digital or optical stream, and it should be immune.
Well, one would hope so. But with the Chinese making plastic chassis and reducing costs by not putting metal anywhere, it's a bit of a worry.
Well, we've got computers here, computer speakers, and when you turn the fluorescent lights on and off, they go click, 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 click. They pick that up. You can imagine how much RF proof they are.
Actually, with the Zoom H2, the little digicorders, I found there was one particular thing. If you had a mobile phone in your pocket and you happened to be recording on one of those things and you walked from one cell to another, you'd hear the bop, bop, bop as it changed cells.
Yeah, that's not too good, is it?
No, but that apparently is common to quite a few pieces of audio gear. I mean, what is it, 1.2 gigs or whatever it is?
Yeah.
Must be very close to the resonant frequency of a lot of leads hanging out of things.
Would be, yeah. As I was speaking to John the other day about the Yamaha mixer here, that's immune to all that stuff. Obviously designed it to... not pick up phones. Obviously, if you've got a gig and they're running hundreds of watts of audio and the phones buzz through the speakers, they wouldn't be very impressed.
Look, I think if you're holding a mobile phone running something like 5 watts of RF really close to one of those things, nothing is going to shield it, but it's just a matter of keeping your own mobile phone away.
This is it's totally impervious to 160 and 80 and that, and doesn't...
Of course, the main requirement is to have a ground plane on the circuit board, not necessarily plastic chassis.
Yeah, look, I'm sure they can design them, and modern, pro audio gear is designed with that in mind, that RF immunity. Obviously, it's just something they do. Everyone's got phones these days, and
the old germanium circuitry seemed to be much more subject to it than silicon.
Yeah, the old valve stuff wasn't that bad, but yes, the earlier transistor stuff was pretty terrible. rectification.
So I think the thing with germanium is it conducts at such a low voltage. I mean, silicon requires, what is it, 0.3 of a volt or 0.7 of a volt before it conducts.
Yeah.
Whereas germanium, it's what, 0.1 or 0.2 of a volt, something like that.
Well, that's why they're good for diodes for RF rectification. That's why they're used. Yeah.
Although the branch used to point out that even germanium diodes need a little bit of forward bias to reduce their AM rectification distortion to a minimum.
Yeah, so now you
I
can...
forget what the forward voltage drop on germanium is. I think it varies a little.
They're
0.2.
They're 0.2.
0.2, yeah.
I was going to say 0.3. I must have forgotten my electronics 1.8.
It goes back a long way in my case. I think 1973 was the last.
Really?
It is between 0.6 and 0.7 volts.
That's silicon.
Silicon Valley. Was there ever a germanium valley?
What, a long time ago.
I don't know where they actually made the... Oh, well, actually, the guys who invented the transistor, were they... No.
Mr. Shockley.
Oh, yeah, sort of. That... Certainly Fairchild started in Silicon Valley, and don't know about the old germanium. The other problem is the majority of germanium transistors I saw used iron legs, and they had very long wires, so they were essentially antennas.
That's right, particularly mobile phone frequencies.
Yes, exactly.
And they were in little glass thimbles.
In 1987, when I was in Disneyland, we met a family from Mountain View, and he worked for Hewlett-Packard, would you believe? So we kept in touch with them, and in 2006, Hewlett-Packard had shifted up just out of Sacramento. I think it was a place called Rockland, and in 1986, the three of us called in there and had a beautiful barbecue tea with them. Left Hewlett-Packard then. I think he took a package and he was driving those big yellow GMC school buses.
Increase in wages.
Well, I sent him an email earlier this year and I haven't had a reply. I just hope they haven't succumbed to that financial crisis over there.
They have those big school buses look like 100 years old in America, don't they?
Mayflowers.
Yeah.
GMCs, Chevys, all sorts of things.
In San Francisco, they still have the trolley buses that look like they were made in 1935 with the curved fronts that make them look like the Southern Aurora.
Ah, yes.
They were.
How do they keep the pantograph on the two wires?
They often don't.
Big springs.
There was some sort of an articulated arrangement. I didn't take that note of the details, but I remember thinking, gee, the people steering this in traffic must have to be bloody careful.
If they forgot they were on a trolley bus and went down a road that didn't have trolley wires, they'd just grind to a halt.
Either that or they'd rip down the 22 kV lines on people's heads or something.
How
they're only 600 volt DC.
But if they,
only 600, he says. That can do enough damage.
if it did accidentally hook onto the 22 kV, the bus would go very fast. It might blow out the rheostat and the accelerator.
Well, you saw what happened to that Indian bloke on top of the carriage in India, and he put his hand up to support himself on the live wire.
Yes.
And it went poof in a cloud of flame.
His hair caught on fire.
You've seen that on YouTube as well?
Yes.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it?
This isn't somebody's actual death, is it?
Yeah, they're just filming the train.
Oh, what
and
bad taste.
And there's that's that for YouTube. That is mild. Yeah, there's all people have in India. They sit in the train or stand on the train roof, and this guy puts his hand up and for some reason grabs the wire and then he falls off the train. Quite. I think it wasn't shot deliberately. Just someone was shooting it, and it happened in the background. So yeah, that's probably got a few billion hits.
They're a little bit too used to travelling on steam trains, probably.
Yeah,
So
maybe.
did he get kiltified from it?
Oh, totally.
Because I wonder what voltage the trains use over there. I mean, I know we use 1500 DC here, but some countries use higher voltages.
Yeah.
We use 1.5 kV AC or 600 DC for the trams.
I always understood it was DC. That's what a friend of mine who drives trains tells me.
AC/DC.
I can't be 100% sure.
Anyway, the trams and the trains are different, that's for sure, because when they short out sometimes...
Rock and roll.
Yes, that's right.
I know the bullet train in Japan uses 25 kV AC, but...
AC...
It drags such a big arc from its pantograph when it's going full power.
AC is the way to go, isn't it, for trains, I
I
think?
thought they used DC on trams and trains back in the olden days for the torque.
Yeah, but these days the trains have got fancy speed controllers, so they can quite happily put a big transformer in there to convert the AC and convert the AC to DC, and that way they don't get as much arc out of the pantographs.
I think it's something we'll have to Google, Dave.
Yes,
Yeah.
I can't imagine that they would have changed the power on the system so that old rolling stock is not compatible.
Well, the old red rattler comes out sometimes on special days.
And that would still be 1500 volt DC. But the things that have onboard transformers in the trains tend to use a higher voltage, because then you get less voltage drop across the lines because it's a more modern system. Quite a lot of the high-speed trains do that, from what I've read. Well, like I said, for example, the Shinkansen in Japan runs on 25 kV AC, and it has transformers in the train to give it whatever voltage it needs for the train to operate on.
Yeah, I think when I've seen train arcs, in the crossings, it looks pretty DC-ish to me. It's got that DC arc sound to it. I haven't been there for 20 years, 30 years, something like that.
It's probably worth another visit. The BART, the underground transport, is really excellent. I mean, it makes the local train and tram suburban service look like a pile of crap.
Bay Area Rapid Transit.
That's the one.
Yep, I went on that when it was just
I found
started.
that when I was overseas. In the places I went to overseas, there was a train or a tram every couple of minutes, and here you wait half an hour, and then often you wait the half hour and it's been cancelled, so you've got to wait another half hour.
And what is ridiculous here, there's no trains after midnight. Now, I was in...
That's right. So
I was in town at a function last night and had to finish quick early so I could get the last train back. And the city's full of cars and traffic and everything like that. But the trains stop at midnight, and the trams, so...
That's right. In fact, on one of the John Fane things, they were talking about the incidence of drink driving, and they reckoned that was part of it. And then the suburbs that are very poorly served by public transport have the highest incidence of drink driving, because people go to all their pubs and clubs and whatever they go to, and either the trains stop going before they're going to come back, or there aren't any, so they just feel forced to drive their car.
Well, that's right. Either that or pay, mega bucks for a taxi.
Which, if they're a working class person, they just can't afford.
I know. It's ridiculous in this day and age. I mean, it is 2008, or 2010, in fact, and we still don't have any trains after midnight. It's like the wartime austerity campaign or something still going on.
In San Francisco, you can get the equivalent of from Frankston to the airport, which is the same distance out as Tullamarine, for about $1.90 American.
That's incredible. We should have
And
that.
it goes at about 80 miles an hour.
Someone
It
here,
certainly is.
they just bumble around, build more freeways.
They can argue all they like about us being a remote country and all the rest of it, but sorry, San Francisco is a fairly remote city from most of the rest of America too.
That's right. Look, Melbourne's 4 million people. In terms, that's a big city, and we should have the facilities.
I'm afraid I'm not impressed with PT in this city.
No, you need a car in Melbourne, you definitely do. And if you live in the outer suburbs, well, how would you do anything without a car?
You're not that far from the station, are you, John?
No, I'm not, but then if I bought anything that weighed anything, even a decent amount of shopping, well, it's a fair hike to get up that hill carrying it without some sort of vehicle.
That's right. Now, how long does it take to get from up way to Flinders Street?
On the train, about 55 minutes or something.
It's not that bad.
Depends on the time of day and whether you get expresses and all that sort of stuff.
I mean...
Yes, it does. It varies, because from Belgrave to the city, it's about an hour, give or take a bit, like Chris said, depending on what type of train and what type of day it is.
So peak hour would be quicker to do the train.
Is Belgrave your nearest station, John?
Well, there's Tacoma. As you go, well, there's Upway, Tacoma, and then Belgrave, and then the next station after that you walk through and get onto Puffing Billy. So Upway is the station here. So I'm just saying, from Belgrave, where I did actually live for a while, it was about an hour or so from there. So it's about it only takes about 5 minutes or so to get from Belgrave to Upway. So it's about just under an hour from here into Flinders Street.
If you lived at Cockatoo, you could take the Puffing Billy when that's running.
Kilohertz, and I can barely hear any difference on you, Dave.
What were you saying?
I've gone up 5 kilohertz and I can barely hear any difference.
Oh, if you switch the narrow filter on, you will. And I think it makes quite a bit of difference like that.
Okay,
So,
but what I'm saying is I'm now on 305.
On 2 metres?
On 145,305 there, hang on. That's 145,300. Any difference?
Not really.
Ah.
I was saying Puffing Billy is quite expensive to go anywhere on that.
Yeah, it's a tourist thing. He couldn't use it as a commuter train.
Well, that's right. If you had to go to work every day by Puffing Billy, it would cost a fortune.
But originally, that's what it was. It was a commuter train.
And a logging train as well, because I think you find quite a lot of the wood for the houses 100 years ago or whatever came from around the Dandenong.
It also didn't originally start from Belgrave. It started from Upper Ferntree Gully.
Oh,
that's right. If you look at the old books, that's right.
I think my tenors must be blowing around in the wind. It crackles on 2 metres, but hopefully the wind will stop.
That.
Yeah, well, the old Puffing Billy, it's good. It's been resurrected, I guess.
I've got a photograph of my mother with a hiking group standing on the front of the grid of, that cowcatch on Puffing Billy in 1931, and the photo is actually taken at Upper Ferntree Gully Station.
Is that when it was just a proper railway?
So you could have gone to the Royal Hotel, walked across the road and got onto Puffing Billy and gone into the hills.
It's what a lot of people did, I gather, although the amount of pedestrian traffic on that train early on was minuscule.
Yeah, because actually if you... there are all these pictures of his things including that, and apparently people used to do just that.
These days it costs you $27 to get to Gembrook.
Is that so expensive?
That's right, I wanted to go on a trip on it, and I thought, so that was expensive.
Yeah, I suppose a family outing would cost you $100.
Yes, it would.
But then someone has to pay for the volunteers and for the machinery and, just do once a year or, tourist trip. I mean, it does cost a lot of money to run and keep those equipments running.
Someone once told me that it's the only rural railway in Victoria that's making a profit.
It's very popular, isn't it? It's world renowned.
Oh, absolutely, and the trip is very pretty. If you've never been on it before, it's well worth a trip.
That's right.
And you can speak to Eric 3AX on a
handheld
helical whip
out
the dog box window.
Yes.
So Desire on 160.
That's right.
Yeah, because Puffing Billy goes very close by where he lives, but when I was younger, when my parents used to go for Sunday drives, they used to drop us off and put us on Puffing Billy, then they used to drive up into the hills and pick us up at the upper end.
Hopefully, they're probably hoping that you wouldn't get there. I think it's some interference that will continue on for a little while. Yeah, it's all to the good. A little trip on Puffing Billy. Haven't been on it for quite some... I've only been on it once or twice, really.
I haven't been on it for about 20 years.
I've been in the engine cabin, which was quite good.
Yeah, that's right, because I knew someone who used to work on Puffing Billy, and about 1990 or so I had a ride in the engine cabin, and I went for a trip on it and all the rest without having to pay for it because of this person I knew, but since then I haven't been on it.
Am I still on?
Yes.
We had a bloke down here in Noble Park or somewhere, was one of the volunteers up there. Ron was his name, or we used to call him Huff and Puff or Plastic Wheels. Yeah, but I haven't heard him for years. I'm just playing with a new GPS, Dave. It's a 7-inch brute.
Ah, yes. So you won't get lost tonight.
And if I go to New Zealand, it's fully covered.
Oh, very good.
And it's got everything on it that opens and closes, and it's probably a bit too much for...
I can't stand them in cars telling you where to go and where to turn and what to do.
No, you turn that off.
I just rely on the old Melways, even my 1970 Melways.
I bought a new 2011, I'm looking at it now, UBD, for $24.
UBD, are they still in business?
Yes, and it's thick and it's heavy. You could use it. Somebody said it's all it's good for to use as a doorstop.
What are the maps like?
The maps seem to be all right. They're very much similar to Melways.
Right, okay.
Well, so they've come up in the world, because the UBD used to always be the poor relative of the Melways, didn't it?
I think it's equal to it now, John.
Yeah.
I must have a look. If they're cheaper, it might have its moment.
Big W.
Now, there was another Streets directory, wasn't there? Streets Ahead. What one was that? Gregory's, yes. Gregory's are Streets Ahead.
To the T-model days, I'm sure there was one called Baxter.
Yeah, because the Melways now broken into Sydney, the Sidways, and I think they've even got a Bridgeways. They have too. So they've broken into other cities. They're quite interesting to look at.
Have they got an Adways as well?
Adways, a Perthways, a Darways.
I suppose it'd be Purways, wouldn't it? So you hear a purring noise coming out of the book like a cat.
Quite a bit. Although I think UBD is big in Sydney, isn't it, or something? It's got different things like that.
Just having a look here. Oh yeah, head office in Lidcombe, yes. Queensland, South Aussie and Western Australia as well.
Okay.
The head office here is in High Street, Paran.
Well, I suppose you need competition, don't you, for the different ways?
Universal Publishers Proprietary Limited is a division of Hardy Grant Publishing Proprietary Limited, printed in Hong Kong.
Yeah, probably the Melways is too. They're quite interesting. In fact, if you get out of Brisways or Sidways, Adelaide Ways, basically, it doesn't matter which one you have. They're all much the same, and you can navigate with just the Sydney one in Melbourne or the Melbourne one in Brisbane. I mean, all the streets look the same, the suburbs green and red and stuff. It's amazing. I have done that. I went to Brisbane, I only had a Sidways, and I used that, and I got to where I was going. It was amazing.
Okay.
Because they're really all look the same sort of.
Of course, in my case now they're not.
Really makes you wonder how UBD and Gregory's get along.
Well, I suppose there's a big market for them. If every car has some sort of street directory in it, there's a few billion street directories they can sell and be divided various ways.
But Melways seems to have become kind of the standard.
Yeah, although I think what happened in Sydney is I think it's either UBD or Gregory's is the major player.
Yeah, I think we've got quite a few old Melways. The old number ones and number two Melways are quite expensive. They're like a little collector's thing. If you look on eBay, they're usually quite expensive.
I have number 4.
Number 4, oh, very good.
I think I told you that was 1907 and it was worth 25 shillings.
Yeah.
So when was number 1?
Oh, 3 years beforehand, I presume.
Yeah, not that old, really.
68?
Yeah.
Okay.
Had one of those and I swapped it for the number 4.
What I would like, there are millions of them around, but they've all gone, is old telephone books from the 50s and 60s. They'd be fascinating, but they don't exist. I've never seen one.
I have an antique shop, a 1916 vintage Melbourne phone directory. It's about octavo size and about 1 centimetre thick.
Just a few numbers. Any recorded announcement services?
No. Actually, I've seen the first Melbourne phone directory, which was a single printed page in 1880.
Amazing.
Had about 25 numbers on them, not all of them connected to each other.
They would have been the richest of the rich who could afford it then.
That's right, yes.
I, like Chris, have a Sansa McDougall directory. Mine is 1961.
They stopped making those things in 1974. Apparently they've got too physically big. I've got the 1942 one.
Yeah, mine is very big, Chris.
It used to be, I had a friend whose father was a financier, and he used to use the Sands McDougall to chase bad debtors. These days you have to use the electoral rolls to do the same thing. A bit more difficult to get access to.
The library down at Parkdale, run by what is it, Bayside, they have a very good collection.
Ah. Well, they do go back. I think the earliest of the Melbourne directories is back about 1865 or something. They've got them at the La Trobe Library on open access shelving.
Oh,
Very
right.
good for family history in my case.
Oh, what? Because your people were in Germany at that stage?
No, just tracking all the different ones, both sides of the channel, where they were living and whatever.
All right, yeah. But you're right, they don't preserve a great number of the Melbourne phone books, as I found even in the State Library of Victoria. You're lucky if they preserved one for each decade in there. They certainly don't have all of them.
I think they're considered ephemeral, just something you use for a year, then throw it away. But you'd think there must be some down behind, the bookcase, or if you're moving an old house, or, someone's used them to keep something up on a higher thing in the roof, or hold up the
pink pages.
The pink pages, yes. Yes, holding up something, or...
I wonder why they went from pink pages to yellow pages.
Maybe they didn't want to promote certain pink activist ideas, I guess.
Well, the Sporting Globe used to be pink.
That's right, yes. There's a lot of pink papers.
There were quite a few official documents that used to be pink at one stage too.
A pinky.
Except the ones that we used to see in the 70s, which were blue.
Oh, yeah, bluey, that's right, yes.
I think you know about them, Dave.
That's right, yeah. Ah, yes.
In fact, that person on your Skype page had something to do with that, I believe.
Ah, yes.
He of the smoking jacket.
This the UBD covers well into Western Port Bay. I can look at French Island and Somerville, the marina at Sullivan, where the Somerville, sorry. I think that's where the DX position up anchors and sails off, doesn't it, Chris?
That's one of the two, not our one.
Nah, this is the Uringa Marina.
Yeah, that's the one, the D expedition that's led by John Fisher 3 ARK and Lino 3 EI is based there. Our own light beam thing is going from Port Albert.
Oh yeah.
At a different time of the year also.
And may God have mercy on their soul.
Well, it's only going to be 4 on ours, and we're only going for 4 days. It's not going to be a major thing.
Much less chance of tension.
Well, we all know each other, and we all sort of have the same interest in the light beam stuff, and we know the people on deal, and the guy who is in charge of the national parks for that area, and accent will be on reducing the chance of friction with not only each other but with the national parks people there. So we won't be actually going there with any intention of putting out RF. We may actually link back to the mainland on 80 metres, but we'll certainly have 2 metres with us and possibly 70 on handhelds only. We're not going there for RF principally.
Just for light beams?
Well, partly that, and partly also the three of us all have, to some extent, an interest in history. The light station there was, the original buildings were built in 1847. The original lightkeeper's cottage is still there. It's now run as a small museum. And we've been talking to national parks and to the caretakers about adding to the photographs there. It turns out that the earliest surviving photographs of Deal Island were taken by a Field Naturalist Club of Victoria expedition in 1890, and the FNCB library where the photographs are is actually in Blackburn, not too far from here. The thing is that being a Tasmanian-administered island, the people from Tasmania who run the island didn't have any idea of the historical resources in Victoria, so this has all come as a bit of news for them, and hopefully will help oil the way for our group getting down there.
So you'll have a much completer picture by the end too.
So you'll be doing light beam between Tasmania and the mainland?
That will be the intention. It may be, we're looking into the possibility, it's a remote possibility of acting as a relay station with 2 light beam units on Deal to relay from Deal, possibly, if we can get line of sight from any part of the Tasmanian, in inverted commas, mainland. It's unlikely that we will, because Mount Barrow, the most likely spot to get through, is technically it's about 20 feet, was it 20 feet or 20 metres, I forget, below the optical horizon. But to some extent, the layers of air on the horizon bend light a little. And it's so close to being line of sight that in the right atmospheric conditions you would be able to receive enough light to make it worthwhile. But we'll just have to suck it and see. At the very least, we can easily get a signal across from Deal Island back to Victoria.
Ah, very good. You should take, I could give you a CCOM with 80 and 160 in it for just put it on your shoulder with a gel cell.
3QM will be with us. He has a little bit of RF gear, but the principal intention won't be to go there to try RF.
How do you liaise? Just use a phone?
Well, we've got handhelds, and it's line of sight back to the mainland. It's not as if we can't hit repeaters from there.
Oh, you can hit repeaters?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, okay.
The repeaters are in the order of 100 Ks. The furthest would be 150, but the Carajung repeater and a few of those other repeaters in Gippsland are easily hit.
Oh, okay.
In fact, the people on Deal Island watch Gippsland TV constantly. I mean, you've got a mountain on Deal Island that's 1,000 feet high, or it's 960 actually.
Yeah.
And that's easily enough. They're only 100 k's from Wilson's Prom.
Yes, no
The
distance.
hill here, isn't it?
Something like that.
Oh, it should be all to the good. And
Yeah.
I'd be interested to know if mobile phones would work there.
I don't think they do. The interesting thing is that the caretakers who've just come off the island today, in fact, I think they were scarpering in the face of the coming weather front, trying to get out earlier than they normally would have because of this. You can imagine what Bass Strait would be on a night like this.
Yeah, seasick.
Oh, very much so. But they were Shirley and Dallas Baker, who were there, were telling me that they have no deliveries of mail there. They only have... they do, however, have internet 2 days out of 3, and I gather it's some form of Wi-Fi, but I don't think they even know where the Wi-Fi is connected. It's getting through to somewhere on the mainland, but God knows how.
Really? Wi-Fi, that distance?
Yep.
That's incredible.
That I found incredible, but they are line of sight, that's the
the
point.
Melbourne Wireless people.
It could be, but
I doubt it.
they're
because
somehow
they've actually
linking
run
into it.
things that go all over the place.
Do they
people
pay-
claim to have got it to work.
Do they pay for it, or
I don't know the details. All I know is that my emails, for instance, when we located the material at the Field Naturalist Club, I sent them some quite detailed scans, like a mega picture and about half a dozen pictures just as samples, and they received them within 24 hours. But they did say that with the wind that they'd had, I don't know whether that affects antennas that they have connected to things or what, but with the wind that they had, that it had been impossible to receive emails for 2 days. So I gather that the email connection over there is flaky. They do have electricity there. They used to have it generated by a Lister diesel, but in October last year they installed a massive great rack of solar photovoltaics, maybe 25 feet long and 15 feet high, which gives them apparently 240-volt power around the clock now.
and
So
it works with the moon, does it?
Well, at this sort of weather it probably would, but it's been charging up over the last summer and autumn, so presumably the battery bank is okay.
Might be on satellite.
Well, if the battery bank runs down, they can always run the Lister diesels a little while and just charge them up again. Top thing.
I suppose their power requirements aren't that much.
Not for 2 people, no.
A friend of mine up the bush who's my neighbour, he's a pensioner, he just had satellite internet connected.
It could be satellite internet for all I know. All I know is it's fairly flaky. It's ultra low population density area, needless to say, the middle of Bass Strait.
Yeah.
I mean...
I think the system, Chris, is worth about $3,000 and it cost him $0.
Really? How did he manage that, or shouldn't I ask?
Oh, well, it's a government scheme. They've all got it in the Upper Goulburn Valley at least.
Subsidised.
And,
Okay.
it costs them to use it, but not to install it.
I remember hearing from a friend of mine who lived in Lithgow, right at the foot of the cliffs of the Blue Mountains, on the west side, that he couldn't get Sydney TV, so the government subsidised him to get a satellite TV receiver, and it was quite a substantial subsidy. It was about $2,500, I think, and he was receiving Imparja, Central Australian ABC, at the Alice Springs service, I think.
Oh, that'd be useful.
There's heaps of... I watch it here. There's heaps. There's ABC, SBS, Imparja, Channel 7 from Queensland, so you've got 4 channels to watch.
All right, okay.
And the thing on the horizon is a completely new system, Chris, called VAST, V-A-S-T, where everybody in the country is going to be assured of the same channels we have in the city.
Oh, okay. You mean like the way there'll be no poverty, there'll be no youth in poverty by the year 1990?
Yes.
Something like that, yes.
I think a bit like the broadband system, I think.
The year of child, and there'll be no child will be in poverty by the year 1990. I remember hearing a certain very famous person saying that.
Yes.
By 1990, no Australian child will be living in poverty.
Yes. Well, it's not just the children you worry about. I think I'm still living in poverty.
It's going to be MPEG-4, widescreen and card.
And every employer is above.
Yes, it'll be 3D as well.
And us people that have already spent money on a digital receiver are going to get an allowance of $400.
I was just looking at a computer shop's catalogue today, and they were advertising data projectors, and they said that they were, quote, 3D ready. What the hell's that supposed to mean?
Glasses on, you might get...
Well, yes. I mean, to me, it's a bit like that advertisement from the 1970 convergence-free tuning. Presumably that meant that the red, blue and green images didn't even come on the screen to get... Oh, I'm hearing myself. Sorry, I didn't want to sound like a heartless bastard, but anyway. Not surprising, it was 25 years ago or something.
Yeah. Oh, by 1990, yes, that's right.
Well,
it's 20 years ago since he said it.
Yes. That would have to be his least glorious moment.
One of them, yes, that's right. I might have him having a spew somewhere here. We've got the Richard Carlton spew, that's right. That could be quite interesting.
You better do it for somebody on the other side of politics.
You feel a little embarrassed tonight at the blood that's on your hands.
You're not improving, are you? I thought you'd make a better start to the year than that. It's a ridiculous question. You know it's ridiculous. I have no blood on my hands.
That was live. I was in Canberra, he was in Brisbane.
Yeah, so...
Right.
Yes.
Now you'll have to give equal time to the other side. Can't you find anything with Malcolm Fraser or something like that?
I could have a bit of a Malcolm Fraser.
Life wasn't meant to be easy,
yes,
perhaps?
I just typed in YouTube, I typed Bob Hawke, no child would live in poverty, and it came up. So if I type in Malcolm Fraser and... what was his thing again?
That was a Tammy Fraser. Life wasn't meant to be easy.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Did he say that? Or Tammy
I
said
don't know that anybody actually said that 3ZZ is costing too much money, but that would be an interesting...
I'll try it.
I can hear you queuing.
No, he doesn't seem to be as popular as Bob Hawke. Maybe I spelled it wrong. Anyway, I'll
Well, Billy McMahon...
There must be something here.
The branch used to do an excellent send-up.
Well, here's a blast from the past from that side of politics. We should be able to have a listen to this.
Ladies and gentlemen, I now have much pleasure in calling on the Right Honourable the Prime Minister, Mr. R.G. Menzies, to declare the Music Bowl open.
Oh, 1959.
Yes. A lot of clapping going on.
Sir, Your Excellency, Mr. Premier, Lord Mayor, and ladies and gentlemen, it's a good night for me in one sense and a bad one in another. Normally, if you gave me an audience of 20,000 silent people, you wouldn't be able to stop me for 3/4 of an hour. But I'm on a time limit tonight. At 5 minutes, they strike the big drum, and I'm off, and the orchestra is on.
He had a sense of realism.
That's right. Her passing by, and I shall love her till I die.
I bet that one's on here somewhere.
And I bet the Queen wasn't feeling very comfortable about that.
No, she didn't. She didn't look very comfortable.
My fellow Australians.
It
is my melancholy duty to inform you that...
my melancholy duty.
Consequence of... Play it, Dave, play it!
I will play it.
Here is the Prime Minister of Australia, the Right Honourable R.G. Menzies.
Fellow Australians, it is my melancholy duty to inform you officially that in consequence of a persistence by Germany in her invasion of Poland, Great Britain has declared war upon her, and that as a result, Australia is also at war. No harder task can fall to the lot of a democratic leader than to make such an announcement. Great Britain and France, with the cooperation of the British dominions, have struggled to avoid this tragedy. They have, as I firmly believe, been patient. They have kept the door of negotiation open. They have given no cause for aggression. But in the result, their efforts have failed. And we are therefore, as a great family of nations, involved in a struggle which we must at all costs win, and which we believe in our hearts we will win.
I'll play this one, though. It's already queued up on the line.
Nothing of Billy McMahon. How unfortunate. I'm looking on the internet. There's just nothing there.
He must have been wiped clean.
Yes.
Must be some old auntie's tapes or something of him.
Oh, and there would be, but they haven't made it onto... Well, you can put them on YouTube. Be the first to do it.
It's far enough back for me to have actually taped it, but I don't think I ever bothered. They've got an item of Lady Sonia McMahon having croaked, but that's about all. Please, spare us. Frankly, I've had enough of extremes in broadcasting to last me several lifetimes. It's no longer illegal to discuss, at least in a comparative sense, politics. That's why I was suggesting that you balance it with some material from the other side.
Yeah, both sides of Parliament.
Oh, I don't think it was ever illegal. When I first went for my amateur licence with the Yellow Book, it said you weren't allowed to broadcast on behalf of, and it had A, B, C, D. Didn't say
we just hate them all then. Don't encourage them. In fact, I hope this broadcast encourages as much discouragement as possible.
That's right, yes.
Frankly, Dave, I can't see any other way out of what's happened the last few weeks than just simply another election going on. And
it would make it easier, wouldn't it?
Look, the way the dollar is slipping, no overseas country knows where we stand in either the Middle East or in terms of economics or whatever. People are confused. A very tiny minority are having a huge say. I just think I can't see any end to this except for another election, frankly.
Well, it's so close that whoever gets in, it's really by protocol or whatever. It's not, the numbers mean nothing. They're so tight. And
it actually points up a major problem in our electoral process, I think. When the country is so close as it is, in fact, it's not a case of cooperation is even less under these circumstances than it is when one or the other party gets in. It's been quite a shock as to what it can do to the running of a country to see it kind of disintegrate this way.
Well, I suppose it doesn't normally happen. It's not normally this close, and they work things out in a day or two.
It indicates how much people are discontented with the majors. We're close to China. We're the suppliers of a great deal of mineral and food resource. We basically are selling our products to China. It's a totally different world now to the one that we were born into, where Britain was the major player and being a member of the British Commonwealth was the big thing. Even America is finding that, I suppose, with the high wages that they have in that country, it's difficult to sell your raw materials to China for a profit. And I really can't see America being on top of things industrially in 10 years' time. I can't see them regaining their primary position in the world. It's a very interesting time in history that we're living through.
There's a lot of welfare somewhere.
Well, it's excessively big, and the thirst that the country has for petrol really puts it behind the eight ball in terms of going cap in hand to other countries that do have petroleum and resources like it, or indeed Australia, which has uranium resources. If they have to fall back on nuclear power as a stopgap between petroleum products, and the principal thing they've got to do is to limit population growth.
Well, that is a thing that it was a taboo subject up to fairly recent, but there's no point making all these improvements, people cutting back, then you double the population, so you cut back more. Where does it end? Where do you say, okay, we've gone this far, we'll all be living in a little room with a 1 watt LED light and half a cup of water? You have to really say what are we going to do?
And in fact, that is precisely the sort of world that our colonial forebears in 1788 walked into, a single mud brick room with a candle in the corner.
A candle, yes. We'll just have a LED light. We don't even get any heat from the LED light. So this is it, I think.
Probably lead poisoning.
Yeah, that's right. They would have thought lead light was burning lead or bubbling lead. Yeah, interesting, isn't it? Something's going to have to be done, and I suppose that at least the ideas are out there.
Yeah, I've often wondered with solar power, has anybody worked out how much it costs in terms of carbon footprint to make the solar cell in the first place?
I think
can
a lot.
the carbon footprint ever be recovered?
Probably not. John, you were saying something there?
I was saying one day they might actually have to bring in a system of licensing for people to have kids. And,
I think so.
If you have kids without a licence, well,
you go
to jail.
Oh, you go to Gold, you go to Pentridge.
That's right.
H division even.
Would you have to go for a road test to get the licence?
Yeah, that's right, road test to see if he... And I think people probably pass the first bit, but maybe fail bits after. Yeah, there'd have to be a comprehensive test, and anyone with interest in certain.
So they'd send you off to a certain room with a cup and a
and this is a family program. I think we'll get back to Bob Hawke or something.
Right. Okay. Yeah.